We believe that, especially because we work with young people, they're giving the best years of their life. And we want them to be able to do something in their 20s that they're extremely proud of, and not wait till their 50s or 60s to do something meaningful and purposeful.
Welcome to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. Successful leaders make building healthy culture a priority. Meet other leaders who are building a culture where people want to stay and know how to win together.
Hey leaders, welcome back to the Build Your Culture Brand podcast. I have with me today my friends Ajit and Satish from India, and we've known each other for several years. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you so much, Jay. Great to be here today. Looking forward to this.
Today we have Ajit Sivaram and Satish Manchikanti, and we're so glad to have them. Guys, today we're going to talk about several topics, and then I'll introduce how we know each other. But the topics we're going to cover are, talking about how you have grown culture. You're working with 75,000 volunteers across India. It's just an amazing organization, and some other leadership development that you're doing. We want to talk about how you do co-leadership, because you're actually co-leading this organization together, and that's a unique role I want to hear a little bit more about. And then the big thing that I think is just really fascinating to me is how you've used trust as a huge leverage point for building culture. So with those topics in mind, I thought I'd share a little bit about how we know each other, just so my listeners understand, because first of all, this is our first, I guess, international interview, but you guys, we met, back probably like 2012, 2013.
Right,
yeah. I was one of the directors of a company there called Lead International. And you guys had just started, I guess, a few years before that, because you've been doing this 15 years. Y'all had started an organization called, what was that?
2010, 2011, yeah.
2010. Okay, so since 2010. So about the time I landed in India, y'all were starting this organization. So we did a collaboration together. I think that's where I really got to know you best, was when your organization and my organization, your organization is called You and I Trust, and your organization, our organization, invited Ken Blanchard to India, and he came and spoke to a room of, I think, 200 professionals there were from people from Hewlett Packard and IBM, and executives from all over town. But you guys blew me away. We were kind of the hosting, y'all were hosting, but you guys you were kind of the welcome greeting crew, but then you also exhibited the work you're doing through your volunteer organization, and all the proceeds from that day went right back into your organization. So it was I was just so impressed with how y'all handled that day. What were some of your highlights from that Ken Blanchard conference?
Thank you, Jay, for that. For us, just Ken Blanchard, that was we've never done anyone of those after that, because after Ken, you've reached the epitome of sort of leadership gurus that you can work with, right? And I think for us, meeting Ken and seeing how humble he was, like we had volunteers who were 18, 19, 20, and he spent time with so many of the volunteers, really connected with people. And I think for me, that was just to see his humility was inspiring.
Yeah. I think the story I remember from that day is we had a tiny slot to talk about the work we do through you and I. And we obviously took twice the amount of time. But he was so gracious. He didn't complain. The lunch got delayed, but he sat through, took all the selfies. And just that humility, as Ajit said, blew us away. Just sharing that platform with him, and of course working with you and rest of your team was such a privilege, and it was a great event. So yeah,
it was a good day. It was one of the highlights of my career, just to be around such an incredible leadership speaker, thought leader. He's really paved the way for so many of us, and his insights, I still live by so many of his principles and ideals, and that just the whole idea of servant leadership that he helped, push forward in the industry. So it was a good day. We had breakfast with him a couple of times, and him and his wife, and it was just a great time. So I treasure that too. But that's how I got to meet you guys, and then I got to hear more, especially that day. But as we kept in contact and had other interactions over the years, I got to hear about the growth of this organization. Basically, I'll let you share more about what your organization does. Um, but I was just inspired about how you're making impact on children's lives, and especially when it comes to tutoring after school. And so, yeah, tell us a little bit about the organization, and then we'll back up, and I want to tell a little bit, or have you tell how you met or how you started this organization.
Cool. Satish, you want to give the 60-second version of what we do?
I think we do a couple of things. Number one is let me just mix it up with how Ajit and I met. We started sort of just being friends. Our wives were good friends, and then we were forced to hang out together, and you know how that goes, right? And my wife would say Sivarams are coming home, and I would say, why are they coming again? They just came 2 days ago. It kind of started off that, but the more we talked, the more we realized that we had lots in common, especially just in the stuff that we wanted to do in terms of social justice in India, right? And we started volunteering together, and then we started working together. I'll let Ajit share why we started working together in a bit. But I think one of the things that happened just through working together was, we were running a HR firm. We would do recruitment. We still do leadership training, but just recruiting is a tough thing in India. Especially back then, the whole call centers were a big thing, right? Like back, as you would have experienced, people from Bangalore calling Boston, uh, and it was everyone's dream job, and every young person wanted to get their job, especially if they were from the lower income background, but they couldn't get those jobs unless you know good English, and you could speak good English, you were tech savvy. So we would have a lot of these young people come over asking for work, and then all we could do is say, no, you are rejected, right? And sort of out of that frustration came sort of an idea saying, hey, we have an office which is empty after 6 p.m. Why don't we invite them and teach them some basic English? That's how we started. We started teaching them 15 children. And it was just Ajit, me, our wives, a couple of other friends who show up in the evenings and teach them. And so what started organically with 15 children and about 6, 7 friends has sort of grown over the years to today. We run about, I think this year is going to be about 150 learning centers across 42 cities. We tutor, teach children one on one. So we have volunteers come and mentor children, teach them English, STEM subjects, life skills, career transitions. So it's a whole lot of things, right? And as I say, it takes a village to raise a child, and I think we kind of embrace that. And how can we build a village around them? So we have about, this year is going to be about 5,000 volunteers and 5,000 students. Uh, yeah, and that's the main thing we do. But I think volunteering is our passion. I think we really believe that country like India, where you have 1.4 billion people, a lot of good can be done if we can sort of really inspire people to come forward and volunteer. So yeah, I know that's more than 60 seconds, but yeah, that's.
So just to clarify, when Satish says both of us and our wives, we're not talking in plural. We each have one wife each, and the plan is to keep it that way.
Right.
But our
Just
respective wives,
so no, there's no misunderstanding.
yeah, just so people don't think, these Indians and their ways, right? So, yeah, I think it was very interesting because we were both at very different points in our life, but similar in some ways. Satish had been running a business for many years. I'd been working with a church. I just lost my job working with the church, which is a story for another day. And so I was trying to rediscover what purpose meant for me, because I assumed that would be the next, couple of decades of my life. And Satish also, the business was not doing well. It was going through, I mean, they had just been through the 2008 sort of crisis, and I think we both were at this low point. And just teaching those children, we went and visited some special needs homes and spent time with children from who were abandoned by their families. That sort of more than gave us purpose, but also helped us sort of discover, hey, this is something we really wanted to do. I think so. It started with us volunteering. It started with just average individuals volunteering. We'd love to say that we had a grand plan after that, but absolutely not. It was very organic. It was almost like it was, hey, this is your next season. So it was more answering a call than us designing this. This is what we're going to do, and here's the 5-year plan for it. I think there were a couple of key conversations we had saying, hey, we want to do this for the next couple of decades in our life. And I think committing to that, saying, hey, we don't know what we're committing to, we don't know what we're building, but we know that, hey, today we're doing this. We'd love to teach more kids, right? So I think just saying yes without all of the bells and whistles was a good place to start.
Tell me a little bit more about how do you get your vision? Here you are in Bangalore. How do you get that vision all the way to, say, Calcutta or Delhi or wherever else y'all are impacting? How do you get that vision to carry out all the way to the front line?
So maybe I'll explain the problem a bit, and maybe let Satish talk about how we do it. So one of the issues with India is not just distance, right? We're quite small, but every state has their own language. So it's not just language, it's culture, it's traditions. I mean, you can travel from one state to another and be completely or almost feel like a foreigner. So I don't speak Satish's mother tongue, which is his sort of where he's from, and vice versa, right? So uh, so then when you talk about scaling in India, and we're in 40 different cities, 18 different states today, you're talking about almost 18 different chapters, or 40 different chapters of young people who are trying to create change. So communicating that vision is even more complex than, and would love to share. I would love Satish to sort of talk through how we're able to do that.
Yeah. Uh, I think I like what kind of the problem you explained, Ajit. I think I've never thought about it that way. Um, I think having said what Ajit said, you do have certain things in common. Uh, One is, I feel like today's generation really wants to impact. Impact is very much part of their thinking. Fortunately, like, when we were growing up, for Ajit and I, for our generation, like, the life was all about survival. It's about making it. It's about, getting the job, getting married, getting a house. Uh, and you had to tick those boxes. But I think, at least as far as the cities are concerned, I think parents have done well, so children have the mental capacity to kind of think beyond saying, okay, I need to sort of tick all these boxes. So they're able to kind of think beyond just survival to, what gives me purpose, what gives me meaning, how can I add impact.
Mm.
And I think
Wow.
to be able to speak that language and show them the way, is your kind of gateway. So, just talking about the vision, I think, one of the ways keeping the complexities is, how do you make your vision simple, to understand, and to be able to, that it translates across languages but also generations. I think it's very important. We've kind of, Ajit and I, when we kind of sat down to kind of write our vision mission statement, as you're required to do, we said, no, we're going to have one simple statement, right? And that statement is building communities of change, right? And we really define that, all the three big words in it: building, communities, and change. We talk about building, how building is an intentional process, right? It's not something that just happens organically. When you build, there is a blueprint. There is, you need some architecture, and it requires it requires hard work to build. And we are great believers, as I said, in communities, and we really believe that when we as people come together, we can do a lot. And we talk about how can we create those communities, with the children that we work with in the communities they come from, but also with the universities that we work with. How can we create those communities of change, they with the corporates that we work with. right? And of course, change is the biggest word, and we say this very openly. We say, hey, community without a cause, a change is a cancer, right? So we are not a community for
Wow.
the sake of, right?
Mm.
What makes us a community is because we've got a very strong purpose, and we're all about change. And being able to kind of put it out there and explain that very clearly in very simple way, and ensure that translates is very important. Of course, we've kind of have a very complex structure to it, and we can talk more about how the program works across 40 cities. But I think how do we communicate is extremely important in a country like India. So I think you have to clarify it, in simple words, and ensure that you're able to speak the language that especially the young people today in our space understand. So yeah.
One of the things I've noticed that y'all are excellent at is storytelling,
Mm.
and gathering these stories of lives being changed. So could you share with our audience a story, any of those stories that kind of stand out to you, or a couple of them that to where you maybe saw a youth come up and their life was changed, and maybe they're still serving. I don't know. Feel free to cherry pick any
Mm.
story you like.
Yeah. I think when you think of UNI, the unique part is we work with children, obviously from low income homes, families, communities, but we also work with young people, right? And for us, it's this almost this dual impact. We get to see two sides of the coin being impacted. Because as much as a volunteer says, I'm here to mentor a child, there is so much of volunteer gains. Like our lives were changed because of I mean, how we volunteered and our season of volunteering. So I think for us, we do see both sides of the coin being impacted. I'll maybe share a story of a child, and Satish could share one of our volunteers. Um, for us, um, one of our kids, Mona, had was 4 years old. She was a band, I think her parents passed away, and then her grandparents were trying to take care of her. And coming from a low income background, they really struggled. So they sent her off to a shelter home in Bangalore. So she grew up one among 30 kids in this shelter home. We started working with her when she was about 10, and she spent about 5 to 6 years in our program. English, life skills, the whole works, getting career counseling, all of that. And the volunteers used to come week after week after week and uh, teach her really, that there's some magic which happens beyond just English. There's also, hey, you get to see someone who's studying in a college that one day you're like, hey, I want to go to that college. And over 5 to 6 years, she didn't just go from the school she was in. They managed to put her in an international school, which is almost like a private school in the US. And then she was able to apply to study in the same college that her volunteers who were teaching her were going to. So eventually she went and applied there, got in there, and today is an accomplished artist. Finished her first degree and now doing her second degree. So to me, stories like that, like when you see that journey, right, and that takes time. This is a 10-year journey of a child. Um, and now today she is, I mean, she will become a contributing member of society, being able to support her own family, start her own family, and give back to society also. That full cycle is, I mean, inspirational. And today we've got hundreds of kids like that who've taken that journey. um,
What a beautiful picture.
yeah.
And Satish said this earlier. It's this idea that we have an office building, and
Mm,
after 6 p.m. it's usable. And so this idea of we have these professionals and young professionals and people. And so to bring in someone like Mona and just take that time, invest in her, what an impact, what a return
mm,
on those amazing investments of time. So beautiful story.
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I think just talking about the volunteer side again, just the way we have hundreds of children who've grown up, and then the such a privilege to think about their journey, and the fact that we get to play a tiny role in, it's their battle, it's their fight, but it's what a privilege that we get to sort of play a tiny role in their story. uh, and I think a lot of volunteers see that as such a privilege, and that is what I think kind of adds sense of meaning to their life as well. uh, I think one specific volunteer I would talk about is Deepon. I actually introduced you to Deepon a few days ago, so I think he's a
I
good,
got to meet Deepon. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. And thanks for making that connection. He's now,
brilliant.
yeah, great guy.
So I should tell you more about Deepan. Deepan was doing engineering. This is about literally 10 years ago. And one of his friends introduced him to you and I. And he started volunteering, which was a very new thing for him. And he talks about how first time when he came to a UNI learning center, he almost left because he's like, it's too much for me. He's an introvert, it's very social place, and everybody is sort of high energy. Everybody seems to be sort of, best friends. It's like too overwhelming. I don't think I'm fit to be here. He almost left, but he continued, and he talks a lot about how that year kind of completely transformed how he looked at life and how he looked at just serving and volunteering. And one of the children that Deepan worked with was a teenager who again grew up in a shelter home, and he was the oldest child in that uh, shelter home. And he really wanted to learn English. And Deepan and the volunteers that he worked with, by then Deepan had become a volunteer leader. Uh, helped him just learn very basic English. And this child actually wanted to do medicine. Yeah, but in
Oh,
India, you can't write even the entrance exam for medicine unless you know English. So they taught him English for 1 year, and within 1 year, he learned not just how to speak English, but to write and to read. And then he went out to write his entrance exam and do his medicine and top the university, uh, and become a doctor, right?
amazing.
And Deepan got to be part of that story, right? And the impact that had on him. And he really got passionate about what he was doing. He not you know he finished his engineering. By then he started working for a tech company here, the same company he still works for. And he went from being a volunteer to leader, and he mentored literally a generation of volunteers to be leaders. And we at least have what I think 6 or 7 still with us who were mentored by him, and then they were volunteer leaders, then became staff. Now they're the senior managers, right? And it's all done by one volunteer, one engineering student who almost thought he's not fit to be in the learning center and sort of make an impact. And he continues to make that impact even today. Even though he is in America now, he still funds one of the girl childs. He's still adding value, and he's being the change wherever he is. And I think that's the beauty about volunteering, right? Once you become a change maker, you are a change maker wherever you go. So
Hmm.
yeah.
That's so good. What a great story. Thanks for telling me the backstory on Deepon. Now I'll have to ask him more about that next time we talk. You went from immediately from years and years of individual contributions, self growth, all about your own numbers.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you've got to lead a team.
Yeah. And the teams they are leading are all Gen Zs. So you kind of have to add a layer that they're not going to respond to authority. Right? They see life very differently than probably our generation would have still taken authority well, right? Uh, uh, so they really struggle. So what we've learned in the volunteering space, where you can't use authority to, that's the need of the hour when you're leading Gen Zs, understanding their context and how they see the whole authority, the relationship they have with the authority figures, and then being able to lead with empathy and trust becomes very critical. So,
Wow.
And when you stack on top of that, Jay, I'm sure you would have experienced this. The whole India is very hierarchical, right? And with this whole respect your elders, which is a very Indian culture, um, leadership and management sometimes just expects that respect. expects that automatically. I am the leader of the center. You must respect my position, and I think that is no more relevant in India today. From a just your hierarchy demands that respect, right? Whether it's Gen Z, whether it's like we were a new generation of young people, and I think it's exciting because things which maybe in the US were sort of birthed a good 15, 20, maybe longer, like servant leadership, all of that is really what is we're seeing working on the ground today, right? A lot of our leaders, it's not about being hierarchical. It's about serving. It's about authentic connection. It's about being vulnerable. Uh, those are what is working on the ground, and then we're able to take that and say, hey, how do we do this at the workplace? So volunteer today is not just learning to lead volunteers; they're also learning to lead and potentially learning managerial skills when they volunteer with us.
I love it. Share a moment. I think one of the things that have struck me too about your organization is your very clear definition of values and how you're using values to keep everyone together. That's a big part of what we talk about here on our podcast. And so share your three, you use them as hashtags. What are your, I think there's three values, and then share how that helps your everyone stay together moving in the same direction.
Yeah. Maybe I'll give you the backstory of the values, and then Satish could talk
Okay.
a bit about the values. I think for us, we were very clear on what kind of culture we wanted to build, what were the values we had. I think that was intrinsic, and you could feel it and hear it and see it anytime you walked into a UNI space for a while. But it took us a while to define it, and because we wanted to be more than just something on a wall. And so it was almost these were 9 8 9 years into it, and we start after starting UNI that we said, hey, we want to sort of crystallize this. So at that point we weren't saying this is who we want to be. This is almost, it was defining who we felt we already were and wanted to hold that space sacred. So yeah, Satish, you want to just talk us through that?
Yeah, I think I think just to kind of add a little bit more context to what Ajit is saying. I think I think it happens with a lot of startups as well. That when you start, people experience values through you, and you're kind of very closely knitted, so you don't feel the need that you need to spell it out. But as you start kind of exploding, as you start expanding, it's very important to state them and sort of again communicate them very clearly. So we created what we called the hashtag book, and we've got three hashtag values. Uh, the first is hashtag be the change, which is, when we talk about be the change, we are talking more personal transformation. It's about, we say, it's not about doing, it's about being. Uh, Especially in the social space, you can go do a good deed and come back and then kind of move on with your life. But it's when you start being the change, you become a change maker. It's part of your identity. It's you know so I think that's what be the change is all about. And we talk about what is a personal transformation, what is a growth that you want to see in yourself. If you're doing X or Y, if you're volunteering, how is it going to transform your life? If you're working at UNI full time, what is the growth path you're looking at? The second one is hashtag in this together, which is all about the community. We really believe that we is bigger than me, right? And we really believe in caring for each other, celebrating each other, and challenging each other. There's three C's there. And the last one, the hashtag big audacious impact, right, which is all about the cause and the change and the organization. We believe that, especially because we work with young people, they're giving the best years of their life, and we want them to be able to do something in their 20s that they're extremely proud of, right? And not wait till their 50s or 60s to do something meaningful and purposeful. And we're great believers in 10x. Uh, so scale is something we've sort of, for many years now, been hungry for and strive towards. So bigness is important for us. At the same time, we say that we don't believe in being the best. We believe in being great in whatever we do, and we kind of
Wow.
differentiate it that way. Trying to be the number one, the best, the top, but we want to do great work. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I can, best ends up almost paralyzing
Yep.
at times, right? Because you're waiting to get the best iteration out before you kind of come public. And so, to be great, it means, let's take whatever we have right now and let's put it out there, and we can iterate along the way. So I appreciate that. I love your reference to 10x, because I remember on people can go check out your podcast for this funny story about Satish showing up for I think offsite, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden Ajit finds out it's about 10x, and you just 10x everything. And
Yeah.
it was just a funny way that y'all talked about introducing 10x there.
Yeah. I wanted to 10x chill out time in the pool, and here was Satish saying, let's 10x the org. I was like, we obviously have different priorities.
Right. So now with big decisions for a large organization, how do y'all come out unified? How do you portray that unity in decisions where you may not be fully, in agreement?
I think couple of things. Number one is we always put the why before what and how. Uh, I think just thinking in that framework, because once you align on why, the what and how can change, right? Some, and having done this for this long now, that could have the best strategy. It's not always going to work, right? So you're sort of, you understand that, but I think we do have a lot of conversations just in terms of why we want to do X or Y or Z, and we really try and find the alignment there, even if it takes longer, takes a lot more conversations. I think that's number one. I think one thing Ajit and I have done really well that has helped us sort of survive, not survive but thrive, uh, is to respect each other's space. Uh, we have, though we are leading together, we've got very sort of departments that we head. So I had certain departments, he has certain departments, there are certain teams, report teams, certain teams reports to me. So we have our space where we sort of operate by ourselves, but we also ensure that if we are making any big strategic moves, we always bring that to Wednesday mornings when we are together, and then we talk through and ensure that we are aligned on why, and that really helps. So agreeing on why, finding that alignment, sometimes you have to be hard about it, and you have to have three conversations and say, okay, we're not able to see eye to eye, and you come back in the room again. Uh, and when you know that it's not going anywhere, we pause and then we talk about our children, or we talk about where should we go on holiday, and that eases up the room, and then eventually we'll find the way to kind of agree on it. So yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I also have the memory of a goldfish. So Satish gets away with a lot. He'll say, "No, this is what you told me last week." So it works in his favor. But I think also just holding on to the fact that, hey, we're in this together more than I want my way, and this is my opinion, and I value that, right? I'm notorious for changing my opinion to being gung ho about this is the greatest thing in the world till next Monday, right? And I'll change my mind. So I think just knowing that hey, we can navigate this, and being committed to what's important rather than what's now, I think has been central for us to figure it out.
Also, I think Ajit is very patient with me. So if Ajit wasn't as patient as he is as a person, we would have struggled a lot more. So if say what it takes for two people to work together, one of us have to be a nice person, and I think Ajit is
Yeah.
a nice one. So.
Thanks, Nish.
Two
Now we
themes
sound like
that I
co-founder therapy.
say that again. What was it?
Now it sounds like co-founder therapy, and Jay's the therapist.
Right. You can find the couch. I can talk you through it.
Yeah.
Right. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to share your story. I love what you're doing. I would encourage people to follow your podcast. Could you point us to where people can find you and follow you more?
I think if you search for Two Founders Walk Into, I think that's what it's called. And you can just look up you ampersand I. Hopefully we show up. Uh, there's also a random headphone brand which sells very bad quality headphones called You and I, but this is the one you want to look for. You could just
Yeah,
say,
I typed you and the word and I, and it came up with the you ampersand I.
yeah,
So I got to your website that way. Can they find the podcast? So if it's Two Founders Walk Into is the name of your
Yeah.
Yep.
podcast, so they can find that on any podcatcher probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and YouTube, I think you have a YouTube channel for that.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Well, the YouTube's a lot funnier because you get to see your facial expressions. So I've enjoyed
Yeah.
that version. Yeah. And I'd love for people to hear more about your organization and be inspired by what we can do with a really, kind of an after hours, make an impact on your community idea and taking that to, basically pan India. By the way, I don't know where, when I left India, I think it was 1.2 billion. I'm just blown away about how, how
Beat China,
populous
we're at
India is.
1.4 or 5 now. Yeah.
1.4.
Right. I know you're competing with China on population. So
The one thing we shouldn't be doing.
right. The one competition.
Yeah.
So, wow. Well, thank you so much for your time. I love your story. I'd love for people to get to know you better. And thanks for sharing your leadership journey with us today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. Love what you're building, and I think culture is there's the passion for culture is something we all share together, and can't wait to read the book.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for listening to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, and share. See you next time.